Welcome to Full Stack Business Owner, where we are enhancing your full stack of skills to build wealth inside and outside of your business. Today, we're going to be talking about the latest news and how it's important for Australian business owners. Most importantly, what we're up to. Now, if you're not already, make sure that you're over on the newsletter. This newsletter is sent out by Charley twice a week. It is the most important thing that I receive every single week.
It's the best email I get as well.
See, we're not biased. Trust us, we're not biased. Head over to fullstackbusinessownr.com/newsletter, put in your details and subscribe to get those juicy emails. Now, Charley, before we get started, let's cue the disclaimer.
Charley here from Full Stack Business Owner. I need to let you know that Grant, myself, and the Full Stack Business Owner team are in no way, shape, or form qualified to give you financial advice or pick investment products. We highly encourage you seek out and engage the use of professionals when making financial decisions or comparing investment products.
This is a good one. So I actually spoke to a guy last night and he was complaining to me about journalists. And his point was like, found out that the journalists talking about house prices and share prices and stuff don't actually invest in houses and shares, which kind of got me thinking, I'm like, oh, I'm not surprised. Like when you say that to me, I'm not surprised at all. And it's exactly why I love things like this, like the podcasting, because we invest and we have businesses and we talk about what we invest in, we talk about business. And the community is always asking us, what are we up to? What is Full Stack Business Owner doing? What are we investing in? How are our businesses going? And I said, you know what, this is probably worth us carving out like a 15-minute segment just to have a bit of a chin wag about what is going on. So the first thing I did want to ask you, Charley, I heard a little whisper that we actually got a new partner on Full Stack Business Owner.
Yeah, so let's go there. So we'll just go back to your point briefly here. It's like when you think about if a journalist is employed by a newspaper, let's say, all right, whatever they're writing about now, when it changes to the next crisis, they don't change the journalist.
Nope.
So that it doesn't match. It doesn't work out. So just again, it's like journalists, as much as they may be lovely people, may not be actually investing or doing the thing that they're writing about it. They're just like they're journalists. Now, coming to that that's why the news cycle is very, very dangerous. To your next question there about some exciting news and full disclosure is like at Full Stack here, we actually have a new sponsor and partner, which is Ray, who's a financial planner.
Go Ray.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have Ray on board. I am, because like he comes very highly regarded. Number one is like some people that in my life all have a massive respect for Ray. And then the second component is it's now a place where we can get some advice ourselves and talk to Ray itself. And we're going to be bringing him on the podcast to talk about the things he's doing. Now, why I think this is so critical is like Ray is dealing with building people's wealth, their insurances, their super, day in and day out, just like Goose is in the trenches dealing with property day in and day out, or Aaron with mortgages, our resident mortgage broker. So when we look at that, I think it's going to be a really nice thing to round it out. And it's also going to be a way we can bring on a different voice in the conversation to go into these topics even further.
Yeah. And it's also the ability for us to talk about some subjects that sort of other podcasts and stuff aren't talking about, because Ray's got an Australian financial license and he can talk about all the things you've just mentioned. And I'm so excited. And I know that we've actually got an interview queued up with him pretty darn soon. So for everyone listening, just be on the lookout for that. And Ray, welcome to the team. This is awesome. I'm super excited for this one. So second one, little birdie told me, Charley, did you buy another property?
Geez, these rumors get around quick, don't they?
I won't lie. I hear it from, let's say someone that begins with B. No, that's too obvious. Anchor. I'll say, so let's just call this person Anchor. That's the person I hear it from.
All right. Let's hedge this one up a little bit here, right? So first off, what I'm about to say is not financial advice at all. I am going to share some of the things I've been getting up to, but I just want to make it really clear that the stuff I get up to is because I speak to professionals. Like I don't pick suburbs personally myself to buy houses in. I don't pick shares. Again, like the thing that I've done and I know you've done is actually reach out to professionals and people who know what they're doing, take on board a mixture of their advice. So again, like I don't speak to one person, I speak to a few, and then I ride or die by my own decisions. And I would encourage that through the whole full stack community is to seek out the voice of experts and get expert advice, because that's what we actually do. Please don't copy what I do. Please don't take the things as like, oh, Charlie's like absolutely nailing in his suburb selection. I'm not. But I will say that I am reaping the rewards and making the decisions from it. So I'll go through it. It's been a while since we've done an update on what we're actually getting up to in the community itself. So more recently, this is probably like Q2 of the year. So we'll say the Q2 quarter. I actually bought a property in WA. So we bought one in Western Australia, which has been an incredibly different experience than buying in the other states. And then we had a massive business quarter. So I didn't do any other investing in Q2 really at all. But we've also done a heap of things when it comes to kind of what I'll call like upgrading our portfolio. So we've been going around at the moment and doing some renovations on one of our properties to enhance it and get the rents up. And then we've also just been, I suppose we'll call it like reloading to a point where we're getting ready to see some opportunities. So that's probably the three big things that I've been working on. And I'll mention I've actually got some calls lined up later today to explore some different opportunities and things that are out there. So I'm in opportunity mode. And you might notice that if I was to go onto like YouTube and maybe like ABC at the moment, they'd probably try and convince me that the world is ending and it's a terrible time to be doing anything. But again, this is why I really like to speak to people that are actually doing the things, because it's just so different to what they're doing.
And I always love to look at the data. So as you were saying, like we use professionals for everything. Like I got an accountant, I got a bookkeeper, I've got like buyer's advocate, I got all these people that just help me out with everything I do. But the best thing is that they're like on speed dial. And so I was like, what do you think about this news? And they just send data. They're just like, have you looked at this data? Have you looked at this data? I'm like, right, it's just a narrative. I get it. No worries at all. Isn't that interesting? So you've renovated. Yeah, we did have a massive business quarter, and you bought another investment property, and then you're stacking chips for some good opportunities that are coming. Yeah. Whilst also talking to people about opportunities that potentially might be popping up.
Well, we might do a deeper dive into some of these, but before we get into it, I want to reverse that question, Grant, because like it's what have you been getting up to? Because I'll say a little birdie might have told me you've made some moves as well.
The darn little birdie. So similar, because I know that we were having a competition on who settles first, and you walloped me. Similar. I bought a place in WA. In Q2, I also did a complete downstairs renovation of one of our investment properties up in Queensland, which is awesome. The place looks absolutely Mickey. As you mentioned, Q2 from business was awesome. Funnily enough, one of the things that also happened sort of just before Q2-ish, which we haven't really done an episode on, or people don't really know, is that I actually just stepped up to just the board level of a company that I started many, 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 many years ago, which is awesome. Like it feels great to have like a new CEO in there and stuff like that. And the reason I did that was to open up the realms for me to dive deeper into full stack and what we're working on, Charlie. And so Q2 with a little bit of splash of Q1 in there was ridiculously huge. And not to mention moving. Right, like I know you moved, but Hazel and I actually moved back to Melbourne, as you said.
Wait, are we twinning?
We're pretty
we're twinning.
No, I feel like it's just all like kind of closed in on one little spot. It's just like, and we're just going to morph into one person. Let's be honest. This will just be a solo podcast at some point. Of just both you and I just merging into one person, just talking.
The proximity is true, right? Proximity is true. Anyway, let's dig into WA first. I think we've both bought in WA. I'd love to get your take on it. Why WA for you? And then what was the experience like?
So I'll walk you through my thought process, right? So I was looking at Australia, and there's 15,700 towns or something like that kicking around Australia. And I went, I guarantee you one of these towns is going to absolutely crush it. I don't know what it is. And so I contacted Goose. And so I said, Goose, I'm like, I want another one. I'm like, you just tell me where's the best opportunity, and you find me the house and I'll buy the house. And that was it. So then I spoke to Goose, and he's like, we're going to buy here. And I'm like, okay, cool.
Did you have any reservation in buying in WA in general?
So like I knew around like Perth had some pretty stale sort of numbers over about a decade. Like when I say stale, like pretty flat line. And so, but the funny thing is that the second that like someone like Goose just goes, well, here's the stats and here's the numbers, And I'm just like, looked at our current portfolio, and I don't want sort of different risk in different states and stuff. So diversification is good. I said, cool, I completely trust you, because has he ever failed me in the past? The answer is no. and then, so then I just lined him with the accountant, Anthony, as well as Aaron, the mortgage broker. And then I think they just had a whole heap of emails and bought a house for me. So that was the whole thought process, was I need something else, and I need another asset. I got cash. Let's go again. I don't really care about what the news says. I care more about the statistics, the data that sits behind it. Like we even had Goose on here talking about how during like the GFC, there was like 30% of the suburbs around, or towns around Australia, actually went up. And I'm just like, there's always submarkets and submarkets and submarkets. And Goose just helps me out with that one.
Yeah,
but
that's really interesting. So I must admit, I did have some reservation on buying in WA, but I actually did some, we'll call it personal development training. I did a few events in WA for myself. Like I was a participant doing some work on myself. And I remember this very distinctly. Was like when I flew over there, I expected to see like just red desert and like a country shack. I was like, there's not going to be nothing here. And I landed and got in the airport and went out. I was like, this has to be one of the most beautiful cities in Australia by far. Everything's so nice and new and clean, and those beaches, like Ocean Beach. And I'm like, the bay in Melbourne is just dirty. Yeah. Melbourne's a hole. It's not. It's got, no one moves to Melbourne for the weather. Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
Or the beaches, right? There's some seriously nice beaches around Australia. But the point being is that I had developed a stigma around WA before I was even there. And I did have some reservations on it based on the history of their property market. But I came back to this is like, if you are going to go with the crowd continually, like the chances of getting a really good result are quite low, right? So like when you hear, oh my God, Sydney's booming, it's already boomed. You're behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
So I looked at that and said, do I think WA is potentially going to see some upside? And in my view, I looked at it and what was presented to me, and I was like, I think it might. And again, we've already purchased here. This is past data. Please don't copy us based on these things at all. But then the other side of it, you mentioned a really great point there, is like, I don't have everything I own in WA. It's a diversified play in what I'm doing as well.
And it's also aligned to the strategy. Like I'm looking for a little bit more growth play. Rents might not be as high as other properties that I own and stuff like that, but it just depends on where my portfolio is at the moment and the play that I'm going on with my portfolio at the moment. So if anyone's listening and going, I'm going to go to your point, I'm going to run over to Perth and buy something, it might not relate to your strategy or even to your play at all. You need the professionals to tell you. Yeah. And so, for me, the thing that I loved about it, so the second they like sent a property, it was like 1 kilometer from this amazing beach and 2 kilometers from this incredible lake. Like it is just like landlocked in this like little spot. And I'm just like, holy smokes. The quality, to your point, it's what Melbourne was like a decade or maybe even 2 decades ago from a product. It's just like, oh my gosh, these things exist still. Like, wow. And then I'm just like, yeah, there's no chance. Like places in front of the one that we bought are like a couple of $1 million for a place. And I'm just like, this is great. So for me, the stigma that I saw, and that even in the news and stuff like that now, like they're like, oh, property prices are meh. Like our property went up 10% before a settlement. Like it was just a great experience from looking at it, breaking the stigma, and then getting in and going, oh, this is what it's about. But like I said, I'm going to ask you, settlement, thoughts, tenants, how did you go?
It's interesting. It's very interesting. And you'll notice I say it's interesting when I don't have something overwhelmingly positive to say.
We've learned that about you. This is good.
Well, I learned some things, Grant. I definitely learned some things. One of the things that you suddenly become aware of when you get into property, if that's your flavor, is that when you buy property in different states, the process for buying a property is actually different in every state, which I didn't know. Like I almost thought of it more like buying a laptop from JB Hi-Fi. JB Hi-Fi, it's the same in Queensland, it's the same in WA. You go in, you buy with the credit card, like buying process is the same. We're one country. Property, that's not true. It's very much done at a state level. Now, WA has some quirks that I wasn't ready for, and one of them is that you can fail settlement 2 times with no consequences. So you could just not settle, rebook it, she'll be right. I'll do it another day, mate. We'll head out to the beach. And I can understand those beaches are beautiful. Like if you're a conveyancer, the boat's there. Like maybe you don't settle and you go have a little fishing trip. Maybe. But my point being is that's exactly what happened. So in every other state, it's like I think they take settlement a little bit more seriously. Where in WA, because there's this, I don't want to say loophole, but like there's this tolerance on settlement that we went through a very, very challenging settlement. Like it was like, all right, it's booked. Oh, no, it's failed. We'll do it another day. And for us, like that was very, very different. Yeah. The next component we learned through this is that is it the vendor we bought the house for? I think it's the vendor you call them.
Yep.
They were actually trying to settle on 2 properties at once, and there was something going on with their other property not settling, which was causing our one not to settle as well. Now, I can't speak to the dynamics of that. That's like secondhand information, but there was some complications with the vendor and what they were trying to get up to, which made it even more complex, which was not fun at all. And what happens in these scenarios is when a settlement fails, well, it creates all this work because now you've got to rebook it. Now you've got to talk to your mortgage broker again. Now you've got to talk to your conveyancer. So it's not just like the settlement failed and then, there it goes. It's like, well, you've got to have funds ready for the deposit. You've got to speak to all these people. And it definitely does put some pressure and stress onto like time boxing to get this organized again, which as a business owner, like I was prepared to run my business. I wasn't necessarily prepared to go reorganize the settlement again.
Yeah.
So that was a new learning for me. And I certainly feel now like I've bought in WA, Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, like a good spread of things. I'm really getting to understand these different processes and just how important it is to know that they are very state-based.
Yeah, our settlement was a little bit different. So when we bought the place, it was tenanted until like mid-August, and it's the tenants are paying such a low rent, it's crazy. And so the more I could delay that settlement, the better.
Can you just unpack that a little bit? So that you bought the house from someone, and they were an investor as well because they've got tenants in it, and the rent they were charging was actually well below market rent.
$100 below. So they were charging $360, and when we put an offer on buying the place, like we already had valuation, like rental appraisals of $460, so like $100 difference.
Yeah, I almost want to pause there. This is like one of the things to be very aware of if you're buying a property is like always check that market rent, because if you're doing it, sometimes you can see that the yield or value proposition is much higher than what might currently be in place.
Yeah, it was crazy. And so I'm like, great. So when we settle the place, we're going to, because you're locked in, like you can't just go and kick your tenant out. So I'm like, okay, we're just going to have this tenant for a couple of months, and it's not going to be great for the hip pocket, but no worries at all, like long term.
Well, it is someone's place where they're living, right? You want to do the right thing by I actually try to be a really good landlord, right? It's like, I think landlords can often be seen as ruthless and like, I'd kick them out and get the highest rent, but it's like, comes with the game, right? It's someone's home.
Yeah. And I try to be a good landlord by just like letting the property manager do it. And like, just like they don't want to talk to me. Trust me. Like, no. You can be the nice guy. So anyway, what happened was, so for people who haven't settled on a property, like you have to do like a finance, kind of like a settlement thing in the middle, which is like, cool, you got finance approval, and then it's like the settlement of the properties a couple of weeks after that. So we had a couple of weeks to get finance, and then we had a couple of other weeks to get the final settlement. And this was like just as like interest rates were like bumping up and doing all these crazy things. And like, so the lender that we were going through was like having a bit of turmoil internally of going, we don't know what like rates to charge and all these things. And so like they're getting all these updates, and like their staffing was less, etc. And so we were just struggling to get responses from them. But thanks to Aaron and the typical way that Aaron and the team do it, it was awesome. We got to delay that by, I think it was a couple of weeks, which again, I was happy with, because great, it's another couple of weeks off. This tenant's paying lesser rent. And then, so that was all fine after a couple of weeks. Then the main settlement, the actual people selling the house had to do some repairs in the property itself. So we found like a little bit of water damage, and we found a couple of other things in a detailed property inspection, and they just hadn't had it repaired during the time. Well, they tried to, but the tenants got COVID, which kicked it back another 2 weeks. So then the repairers couldn't go in. So then the plumbers and stuff went in, and then they fixed it all. But then there was still one thing they didn't fix, so that delayed settlement again. And then we went for a settlement, and it got delayed by a week. And so it actually kicked the entire settlement process out by about 6 weeks in total. which actually worked out very well for us because by the time we took ownership of the property, it was so much closer to us actually finishing up our lease. Funnily enough, during that whole process, property increased by 10% without me paying any mortgages or anything like that. And the rent has actually gone from like $460 to $485, and the same tenants actually want to stay in the property, so they are fine with paying an extra $125 a week, and they have a rent review in 6 months as well after that.
Isn't that interesting? That was another thing by your experience, yours was delayed longer than mine, which I mean, it's not a competition, but I did win settlement.
I know, right? Damn it.
Delayed settlement in certain conditions can actually be a really big win. So if you've bought a property and let's say they go, oh, we could settle in 30 days or 3 years, just in this example, your loan doesn't kick in until settlement does.
Yep.
Right. So if in certain circumstances, a delayed settlement can actually work in your favor, and yours did definitely here, I believe.
It was awesome.
An interesting part of the strategy. I know developers do this as well, right? They'll buy a property and go, oh, can I get a 12-month settlement? And in that time, they bring in a condition to like get their plans done and council approval so that they're able to delay paying the loan until they do it. I won't speak to the specifics. I've only done one development. I'm not going to pretend I'm a pro at it yet. Hint, hint.
Drum roll.
But I will say that there's some interesting strategies that can be deployed there. All right, I want to share that. Can I share a story? I want to go about the tenant story now.
I think people have to hear this story. I love this story.
I almost can't believe this is true. So we get settlement through. We're really happy. We've got an agent in WA looking after the property who've been awesome as well, right? Really, really good. So we actually get a tenant for this property super quick and super easy. So we're happy. We've got very low vacancy time. Someone's moving in right away. The property looks like really good. It's a very low maintenance property in general. All right, so try this on. Tenants move in. They're really happy. Agent's really happy. And then all of a sudden we get a bit of a crazy email. Like an email I wasn't expected. Now, we do get all the normal things as well, right? Like there was a few things to tidy up on the property, door needed to be replaced, a window didn't shut, new fly screen, things like that. But we're used to that. We accept that in the process. However, we get a message from the agent saying that there's some weird things going on at the property and there's been some weird things happen in the house. And we're like, what do you mean? So the first thing is that when the vendor who was living in the house, right, this was an owner-occupier, left, right, is that clearly the last night before they left, it's like they've done a big cook-up of some sort of greasy meal and just haven't cleaned it up. So they've like cooked some massive curry without a range hood and just like left a layer of grease all over the kitchen, everywhere. And like we had to like actually get in cleaners to fix that up. Right, so that was like that's just like who does that?
Dude, that's weird.
That's weird. And apparently it was a substantial amount of mess. And like the tenants, the people that moved in were really good about it. We got cleaners in, so I'm very grateful for what they did. However, this is where the story gets a bit bonkers. Is we get a message saying that so something weird going on where someone's coming to the house that's not the tenants and moving furniture around in the backyard.
That's weird. Is that
so?
Paranormal.
It turns out, all right, we're ready. We've got a bit more info on this. Is that the people that sold this house actually, it appears, separated. This is a divorce. Now, it appears one of the people in that relationship may have got a new partner and the other one was unhappy about it. So they didn't know that they've moved out.
No.
So basically, this is like a lover's quarrel that's now freaking out our new tenants, right? And like the tenants are like, have you ever like extrapolated or exaggerated a story?
I've heard people do it all the time. I try not to, but yes.
Right. So just think about this. You've moved into this place, right? And someone's moving around your furniture. Like what would you do?
Freak out.
And they did. So it's like you've got a panicked tenant who's worried that someone's going to try and break into the house and like, and the story just gets more and more extrapolated into the ideas of like, the neighbors said these vendors were dodgy and, it's like the people rocking up look like drug dealers and like, and it just gets like crazier and crazier. Now it's all settled down now, but it's like I was not prepared in any way, shape or form to think that a lover's quarrel could end up turning into something here.
let alone in your backyard.
Yeah, and can you imagine the experience for this tenant? They've moved into this. They've moved interstate, so they'd come from another state to get into this place, right? They go into their house, and then someone's done a massive cook up and just left grease everywhere.
They probably said the same things like, "Damn, WA is weird." They're just like, "This is." Yeah,
well, they're a little bit different over there, but I like them. I really do.
We're not in Kansas anymore.
All right, so you go into your house full of grease, has to be cleaned up, and then someone's coming to your house and moving furniture in the backyard and trying to mess with you. And I'm like,
man, I don't even know what I'd feel. Like, I'm just like, that is brilliant. So it's all calmed down now. They're happy tenants, or?
Yeah, everything's going smoothly now and everyone's a happy tenant. I believe so. And like, of course, we want to support and help in that as well. So I think that's been all sorted now. I'll report back if it is. But more than anything, I just want to paint a picture that it's like, I think sometimes people look at like property investors or any type of investor or business owner and they paint this facade of like, it's all roses, right? You just get into this and…
It's passive income.
Yeah. It is certainly coming with other challenges that you got to deal with. And I know some of the other investors I deal with, like this just comes for the games. It does. Yeah. So you got to be prepared for that. And I think if you're going to get into property, you want to eyes open, like stuff happens.
Yeah. We've had the same, like we've spent like 5 figures on fixing stuff. We've had some weird tenants coming in, like, but then I've also had some great experiences. Like these tenants are staying. It means I don't need to do anything. Like, there's no bond cleaning. There's no like changes. It's just, okay, just continue as you are. I love these episodes. I will say one thing though, Charlie, is we have got requests around like what are we planning in the future. So we do have to make sure that we do a topic around like what are we doing, what are we thinking about, and all those kind of things.
Can I put a little hint?
All right, go on. Drop something. I'll give you 30 seconds.
If you and I are closer to Melbourne CBD and we were thinking about seizing business opportunities, like, would that be a hint that there might be some things happening in Melbourne CBD? And maybe if I'm saying it on this podcast, that it might relate to something to do with full stack?
Potential. You know what? I don't know. We'll see if people can put two and two together. We'll see.
I'll leave it there.
We'll see if they can. But yes, I do feel as though me moving back from Noosa and you moving up from Peninsula might be leading towards something good. And so for everyone who's listening, and if you want to find out what that is, just be sure to tune in to the next episodes and make sure that you're on the newsletter. The newsletter is actually designed to enhance your full stack of skills to build wealth inside and outside of your business. So head over to fullstackbusinessowner.com/newsletter because we'll be dropping it there first. So be sure that you are subscribed. But if you're listening to these episodes and you've got a friend, family member who's going, wow, that could actually be beneficial for them, shoot them over the link, send them and just say, hey, maybe this would be helpful for you. And I just want to say thank you again for joining us. And we look forward to catching you on the next episode of Full Stack Business Owner.